guys, welcome back to my channel. Simone here. So today I'm going to be doing my science fiction books, reads and recommendations. As you know, this is a series that I've been doing for a while, so I'll link the playlist below, but I've decided to go for science fiction today because I find it really interesting and I enjoy reading science fiction books. I just don't do it very often. So if you haven't watched one of these videos before, I'll just quickly explain. The first 5 books I talk about are the reads ones, so they are 5 books that I have read. Now they are not necessarily books that I've liked, it's just 5 science fiction books that I've read. Now I'll then tell you whether I liked or disliked them and what they were about. Then I do my 5 recommends, which are books that I have been recommended or books that I want to read and kind of a general gist of what I think they're about. And yeah, I hope that you like this and let's get on with it. So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Host by Stephenie Meyer. Now Stephenie Meyer is the author of the Twilight series. If you haven't read them, you probably have, or at least you know about them. This book is one that I didn't really like that much. I gave this a 1-star at the time when I read it, but I felt like it was because I wasn't reading it at the right time. I'm going to really quickly read the inside flap to you. So it says, Melanie Strider refuses to fade away. Our world has been invaded by an unseen enemy. Humans become hosts for these invaders, their minds taken over while their bodies remain intact and continue their lives apparently unchanged. Most of humanity has succumbed. When Melanie, one of the few remaining wild humans, is captured, she is certain it is her end. Wanderer, the invading soul who has been given Melanie's body, was warned about the challenges of living inside a human. The overwhelming emotions, the glut of senses, the too vivid memories. But there was one difficulty Wanderer didn't expect. The former tenant of her body, refusing to relinquish possession of her mind. Wanderer probes Melanie's thoughts, hoping to discover the whereabouts of the remaining human resistance. Instead, Melanie fills Wanderer's mind with visions of the man Melanie loves, Jared, a human who still lives in hiding. Unable to separate herself from her body's desires, Wanderer begins to yearn for a man she has been tasked with exposing. When outside forces make Wanderer and Melanie unwilling allies, they set off on a dangerous and uncertain search for the man they both love. One of the most compelling writers of our time, Stephenie Meyer brings us a riveting and unforgettable novel about the persistence of love and the very essence of what it means to be human. This is very, very sci-fi. It has like the alien element and kind of the in the brain element. I feel like I will like this. I just need to read it at a time when I'm really interested in it. So hopefully I'll read it at some point. But yeah, this is kind of one of those books that I'm unsure about. But it is sci-fi, and so I wanted to talk about it because I feel like it is an interesting... I'd love to know who likes this book and if you like it more than you like Twilight, because yeah, I'm just fascinated to know that. The next book I want to talk about is also one I didn't like, so this could be an interesting... This is turning into I don't like science fiction, which is not true. And that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Now I read this, was it last month or the month before? I read it recently. I'll link the wrap-up that it's in. But I found this book, the writing was just horrendous. Like, I liked the storyline, which is why I know it's like a sci-fi story, and I really liked that, but the way it was written I just wasn't a fan of. I think it was too, like, I don't know, the wording of it was weird. I didn't enjoy the writing. I thought it was very convoluted and just too much. Like, I really didn't like it. But yeah, I am glad that I read it so I can say I've read Frankenstein. And like I said, I do like the story of Frankenstein. I find the whole thing of like what it means to be human, which is weird because that's what that other book is as well, so maybe that's like a theme of sci-fi books. But yeah, no, I liked Frankenstein the story, but not the actual way it was written. Next up we have The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey, which is a kind of sci-fi dystopian. I gave this book a 3-star. I did enjoy it. I preferred the film probably. I actually find often that sci-fi is better in films. Now, that isn't necessarily the case, just in a few that I've noticed. But I still liked this book and I did enjoy reading it when I was reading it. This follows a girl named Cassie, I believe is her name, I'm trying to remember, who lives in a world where basically aliens have taken over the planet. And they have come in waves, so each wave is like I think one was like a virus that was killing people off. I honestly can't remember the other ones. But the 5th wave is that the aliens are taking over the brains of the humans. Again, this theming thing was not meant to be the case, but it's kind of worked that way. Like I said, I did really enjoy this book. I would recommend to read it if you like sci-fi and dystopian, but I do think there are better ones out there. Yeah, I enjoyed the 5th wave, and I think it's a trilogy, so maybe I'll read some more. I don't know. Depends how I feel, I guess. But yeah, I'm feeling feeling like this is turning into quite a negative video, and I don't feel like it was meant to be that when I started. Okay, now we have one that I actually did really like, and this I gave 4-star to, and that is The Giver by Lois Lowry. It's a really short book. It took me no time at all to read, and The Giver kind of reminds me of Divergent in some ways, and you'll understand when I explain it, that The Giver basically follows a society where at a certain age you're all given the same things. So like you get a bike at the age of 11 or something like that. Like your age is kind of milestones, and different things you're allowed to do. And when you get to, I can't remember what age it is, I feel like it was like 13, but I could be wrong. You are given your career, basically, the job that you're going to do. And the main character in this is given the giver as a job, and there is only one of the giver, and he is an elderly man who is going to teach the new giver about it. And it's kind of a weird dystopian, it's really interesting. It's definitely science fiction. I don't want to say too much else because I feel like it's interesting going into it without knowing too much, but I did really enjoy this, and I think that I just really liked the way it was written and kind of the story and the way it was told. Like I just really liked that. So yeah, it's definitely a book I would recommend reading, and I think it's a great one. So what are you waiting for? Go check it out. And then the final sci-fi book that I've already read is an adult sci-fi, and that is Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. Now I saw the film of this and did not understand a single thing. Then I read the book, and then the film made much more sense. It is a book that you have to stick with. I did give this a 3-star just because it was a little bit confusing, but I actually really like the story. It basically has 6 different storylines that you start with number 1, then it goes to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it goes back 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then there's a link between each storyline, which I'm still not totally sure I understand what the link is, but it's really well done. I love the film because in the film you have the main character, the characters in it are all played by the same cast, so each story of the 6 is played by the same cast of people, they're just in different roles, and I loved that. I thought it was really interesting. I think it's got like Halle Berry and Tom Hanks in it and people like that, so it's really, really good. Again, I really liked this book. It's a difficult one to kind of get your head around, but once you have, like, it's so good, and I really, really think that you should. If you like sci-fi, you will definitely like it. But just be prepared, you have to put in a bit of work to really enjoy it. So then next up is the recommends section, which is 5 books that I haven't yet read, that I've either been told I should read or I've been interested in because I've seen it somewhere or I've heard about it. Yeah, so let's get started with those. So the first one is June by Frank Herbert, which I'd heard about and was kind of interested in. And now I'm not 100% sure because I saw Becky from Beck's Books talk about this in her wrap-up, basically saying how much she hated it and it was like a slog to read it. And now I'm unsure, but it's a book with a lot of different layers as far as I know in terms of politics and the kind of system. I think it follows a world where different planets are owned by different, I think, noble houses, and they kind of have like, and then they all have to like report to this like one body. I'm not 100% sure, like I said. This is apparently quite a political sci-fi book, and I've heard some people love this book, but like I said, Becky is quite, like, she's definite on the fact that she really does not like this book, so I don't know how I feel about it. I might read it in the future. It is one that's on my list, but not one that I want to get to right away. The next one is Across the Universe by Beth Revis, and this follows a girl named Amy who, in the life that she knows, I believe, a group of them are frozen and then sent on a spaceship to a planet where they are supposed to be waking up in like 300 years time, and then she wakes up 50 years too early, and then has to deal with this fact that she's living on a spaceship with a load of frozen people. And then I think she finds out that actually it wasn't an accident that she woke up, like somebody deliberately did it because they want to try and kill her, and then she has to try and deal with that so that her, like, the rest of the people and her parents are not next. I think this sounds incredible. I think this is a trilogy, I could be wrong, but I've heard really good things. The cover of this is beautiful. I'm sure I've got it on the screen here next to me. But it is a beautiful cover. I really, really, really want to read this, and it sounds like something that I can get behind. It sounds like something I will enjoy, so hopefully I love it, and yeah, I really want to read this one. The next one we have is actually a film that I saw when I was younger and I thought was really funny but really weird, and I don't really know the storyline of it because I don't really totally understand it, but it is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Now I think this is a series and I think The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is the first one, but I watched this film which had Professor Snape in it, Alan Rickman as the robot. It had, what's his name? I don't know what his name is, but him. No, it's not coming to me. And I know it's about the world ending and something happening, and I think it's got something to do with spaceships or something. I'm not entirely sure, but like I said, I watched the film when I was younger and really thought it was funny, but again, I don't remember anything about it, so I'd like to re-experience that in book form. I also really like Douglas Adams. I like the adaptation of his book, the Dirk Gently one. Holistic Detective-y. I don't know. It's something to. I'll link it below. But I watched it on Netflix. I think it was the first season I've watched, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's definitely one that he's an author that I'm interested to read some of. Next up is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I hope I said that right. And I think, again, I've seen the film for this a long time ago. I think it had Keira Knightley and I can't think of her name either. Oh god, I'm terrible at this. But it was a really good film, and it basically follows a group of young children who go to a boarding school called Hailsham, and they are kind of really well looked after. You know, nothing seems to be bad or anything, and then it's only when they leave Hailsham that they realise exactly what Hailsham actually was. There is some twists in this book, well, in this film should I say, so I'm assuming the book will be the same. And I felt quite emotional watching the film, so I feel like the book could make me feel the same way, and it's one I definitely want to get to. It sounds really fascinating, and like I said, it's one that I liked the film. I so often do this with sci-fi. I feel like I tend to watch the film first, because I think the books can sometimes, sci-fi confuses me a little bit sometimes, just because it's not my general genre that I read, so I quite like to watch the films first, which I know is not something the BookTube probably likes, but I don't mind which way round it goes, so yeah. And then the final one that I want to read is a book called The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. Is that right? Yeah. And she is an author who I think recently passed away, which is really sad, but I've heard really good things about her writing in terms of fantasy and sci-fi in general. And this book I don't know too much about. I know it's about the main character of Shevik, who decides, I think he's a physicist, and he decides to go on a journey, basically having to leave his entire family behind and the people he knows, and he travels to a separate planet where he tries to figure out what is the point of life. Oh, that's probably not it. There's something's going on, he's not enjoying something, and I think he then has to try and like deal with it. Again, that's a very loose synopsis, I don't know anything else. I am really interested to read this. I really want to read an Ursula Le Guin book anyway, and this one just sounded quite interesting to me, so I think this might be the one I go for first. But yeah, that is my 10 I suppose, reads and recommends for sci-fi. I hope that you liked this video, guys. Give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already to see new notifications for when I upload. And I upload every Monday and Friday at 5 PM, so please do come back if you're enjoying it, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys!